This one is especially for you if you are realizing that you're overwhelmed. If you were doing some sort of educational thing with your kid that seemed to be working well enough for the moment, whether that was the perfect for the moment elementary school or actually a really dope Montessori program or an ALC or other type of self-directed education school or center. But then Rona. Then the pandemic hit and you had to bring it on home. You had to bring your babies back home. Or if you actually had to leave somewhere that was working out even during this pandemic and you had to leave for other reasons, like some of the so many other reasons our children end up needing to be rescued from classrooms and other schoolish places that could be public school, private school, charter school, SDE center or nah. You know, if that is the experience that you're having, that sense of overwhelm because a big shift happened and you find yourself really trying to lean into self-directed education, but just not feeling sure what you're doing, you know, and feeling like your kids are straight wilding, like there's no structure, like there's no real learning happening. They just out there dangling in between learning. If you're trying to find some sort of harmony between being a guiding support for their learning, but not doing it in a way that centers you as the adult or an adult-centered process, but you also trying to keep it sane during this pandemic, I got a few things to add to the mix. Questions. The first question is, how do you feel about making a list of what you're already doing? Because sometimes what you're already doing is actually working, and I have air quotes up, but you just don't have enough experience with unconventional learning patterns to recognize what is happening. So, how do you feel about making a list of what you're already doing? And the list is powerful to name things, to study things for yourself, you know, to study things over time and not just based on how you feel in a moment, because that's what we tend to do. But the list is also useful because it can help you to recognize your perspective as something that is part of the problem in a way that is wonderful, because then you can work toward changing that. Okay? Let me give you an example. Folks who weren't in self-directed spaces before are now learning how to do that. Spaces like OutSchool or doing group tutoring online, communities offering courses that children can take online, just all these dope options. Those are present and people are using them, but they're still noticing things like, well, yeah, but my kids are still arguing about this, or they're bored with it. They're not interested, and so this isn't working. The reality is that arguments, fights, disengagement, boredom despite having lots of options, those things are normal no matter what. It's not because of OutSchool not being enough. It's not because of this online program not being enough. It's because of life skills needing to be developed through real life situations that become opportunities to really name and be with what is happening and to shift into what needs to happen. For example, if you notice that your kid was in a program online, they were taking a class online, and at first they seemed interested in it. A few days passed consecutively that they're just not engaging with it. Our schoolish mind will have us blame the fact that it's online. But what we didn't see is that our kid had a very similar experience when they were in a classroom, sitting down in a classroom, and they found other ways to engage themselves, or they did what most of us as adults do, is that we learn how to put that in a little box and blame ourselves for wanting something different than what we have. So in that, the benefit of being able to notice a child feeling bored or disengaged or being in conflict at home is that then there's the opportunity, one, to notice that, to also notice what they tend to do with those feelings, and then to offer support and partnership around healthier ways or just different ways to manage those feelings. Boredom, for example, for us seems to be something that we want to fix. We want to resolve it. As we lean into self-directedness, we actually recognize the benefits of boredom because it's not a wayward out there with no one to be around and to vet things with boredom. They're bored at home. You and they can talk about noticing boredom and doing things to shift out of that, doing things to find out what might feel like something healthy and useful and fun to do and not just something to replace the feeling of boredom. What things do you tend to do when you're bored, and what can you learn from paying attention to those habits? What can you learn about yourself? What can you learn about how your emotions tend to impact how you show up for something that feels like learning, right? Like to get to discover the human and not just the learner or the person who may or may not be learning in the moment. Also, to not just focus on the person arguing or the person who is disengaged, but to support yourself and that person in learning what they tend to do when they feel like that and offering support, exploration over time about what they can do differently. These are some of the same skills that we as adults navigate quite poorly because we don't have the sort of practice with it that we can offer with our children and for our children now. So when we find ourselves, whether it be in the middle of a pandemic or the other versions of pandemics that happened for us personally or with our children or in our lives, in our circles, wherever we are, we might find that we threw out or moved away from the conventional schoolish framework. But now it feels like there are these big chasms between what we had and what we're supposed to be doing, right? Struggling with that. What do we do with our time? I don't want to be trying to engage my kid 24/7. That's not practical. And I also am not willing to plop them in front of a screen all day. So what happens then, right? That's the thing. These questions are the direction of the answers, the emergent structure, the knowledge that comes from being with this, not the knowledge that you should somehow have right now to apply to it to make it feel different. How it's feeling is the lesson. This is it. When you feel, for example, like a kid is disengaged, what happens for you? Do you then rush to try to give the kids something different? What do you do? And what do other people who are trying to raise free people and move away from the conventions of this colonized idea of learning, what do they do? How do you feel about that? It's a slower, more conscious, less prescriptive approach to learning and living in partnership, in relationship with young people. The reality is that this discovery process is uncomfortable and necessary. When I found myself and still find myself in different versions of feeling lost or unsure, or like I don't have enough of something that I need to parent and to support my kid the way I want to, when that was and when that is and when that does come up for me, the thing that I tend to do is really lean into what is the thing behind it? What is the thing that I'm afraid isn't happening? So if it's like, I'm afraid that they're at home and getting nothing, and that this feeling of nothingness is going to carry over, and then they'll get lazy, and then I'm not doing my job as their parent, and to really be with that and to give yourself the space to say, okay, if I'm not willing, if I'm having these feelings, but I'm not willing to go back to the schoolish route, what are some of the ways that I can engage with these people in my life? And what are some of the ways that I can make it okay for whatever level of engagement I have been giving? What are these feelings of not enoughness really rooted in? And the more I spend time with these feelings and around other people who also spend time with them, the more I learn what they're actually about. Colonization and capitalistic marketing-based narratives about how children and learning should look and work and feel. And that's real and true. And it's a healthy process to be in if you can see it as a part of this overall process of moving away from the schoolishness. So it isn't about what to give them to learn. It is about what you are learning and what you and they can do with what you are learning. Because learning is always happening. Even the noticing of boredom and conflict is curriculum. And so as you feel through that, and as you check in with the pieces that you can hold right now and leave the pieces alone that feel like, the hell you talking about, Akila? As you hold the pieces you can hold right now, try to let them be enough. Try to let them be enough to invite you to be in more communication with your child. Communication that's not just about talking. It's about observing, listening, being with them, being with the feelings of when you're not being with them, stretching your boundaries of them sitting in front of a TV, watching something and feeling like, well, if I continue to do this, then blah, 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 whatever the things that you put at the end of that sentence. Really being with those and being around other people in spaces like this to say, is that really true? Is it possible that someone could watch 2 weeks worth of TV every day for multiple hours and take away things from that are useful and other things that are just fun, and that be okay? And that me being in communication with them about what they're watching or drawing or whatever they're doing, whether just being in communication about them with that as I observe that over time, whether that could be enough for a while. Because it could be. It could be.